Hello there. Today I'm in the Emirates Lounge at Auckland Airport, about to board a flight on my way to Europe. And I thought I'd see what they had in the way of a port. To my great surprise, the offering I discovered was Taylor's 2007 vintage port. So obviously I had to do a tasting on that. Now, Taylor's is one of the most highly respected firms in the port business, particularly having built their reputation on the quality of their vintage ports. They're also one of the oldest companies, having been founded in 1692 by John Bearsley, an English merchant who'd come to Porto and was looking to be engaged in trade, so he hadn't initially set out to be involved in wine. Having said that, the company has stayed in family ownership for 3 centuries. The company didn't get its name Taylor's until 1838, however, with the forming of a partnership between Joseph Taylor, John Fladgate and Morgan Yeatman to create Taylor, Fladgate and Yeatman. Today, Taylor's are seen as the leaders of sustainability in the Douro Valley, and their success can be seen by the fact that their wines are exported to over 100 countries worldwide. Now, the 2007 Taylor's Vintage Port states on its label that it's a combination of fruit from Quinta de Vargellas, Taylor's leading Quinta in the Douro, and their other top Quinta, Quinta de Vargellas. And that's what's stated on the label. And that slightly confuses me, because in 1997, Taylor's purchased Quinta de Unco, and it had been my understanding that from around 2000, some of the wines from that historic old Quinta had also been included in Taylor's Vintage Port. But as I say, this isn't noted on the label of this particular wine, so may not be the case. The vineyards we're talking about across these 3 Quinta, however, are all vineyards on steep hillsides where the soils are free draining, slate-like schist, making water management very important for this region. Now, a broad spectrum of grape varieties will go into Taylor's Vintage Port, particularly as it's a blend of wines from these 2 or possibly 3 Quinta, but it will certainly include Touriga Nacional, Tinta Rores, Touriga Francesa, Tinta Barocca, Tinta Jau, and Tinta Amarela. But certainly that's by no means a comprehensive list of the varieties included in the vineyards here, especially because many of the vineyards in places such as Quinta de Vargellas are in fact field blends anyway. The wines are traditionally made with fermentation and a quick maceration in open slate lagares, where the fruit is trodden, as is the tradition, by foot, with the idea that this is both highly extractive but also quite gentle. It tends to mean that the pips of the grapes aren't crushed to release bitter oils into the wines. Now, in 2007, a wet winter before the vintage had replenished the water reserves in the soil. It was a humid spring and early summer. Temperatures were lower than average and there was quite a bit of rain. There were, however, no heat spikes for most of the summer. And then in the last 2 weeks of September, temperatures soared to between 35 and 38 degrees Celsius on most days. And these warm, dry conditions brought the fruit to near ideal ripeness, ensuring that there was both sugar and tannin ripeness, while the fruit was still able to retain good acidity. Harvest began at Quinta de Vargellas on the 17th of September, and then a week later on the 24th at Quinta de Vargellas and at Quinta de Junco, having made the wine through rapid maceration during fermentation and foot treading, followed by fortification with a neutral spirit to stabilise the wine and to leave sugar in it. The wine aged 2 years in casks in cellars near the coast in Villanova de Gaia. The wine was bottled in 2009 and has aged reductively in bottle ever since. So let's have a look at the wine, shall we? Given the fact that this is a top vintage port, I'm a little surprised to find that the really quite deep, dark, black red with ruby at the rim isn't actually completely opaque. The wine is labelled as having 20% alcohol and almost certainly has over 100 grams per litre sugar, so not surprisingly it's clinging very readily to the glass when I swirl it. The aromas manage to be both rich and structured at the same time. There's definitely black fruit, be it black cherries, boysenberry, black berries, but also there are notes of bitter licorice and graphite, and I think there is perhaps just a little bit of spiritiness still just showing that hasn't completely married in there. So let's have a taste. The palate has incredible grip, it's very well structured. There's a lovely sweetness in there, but that doesn't come to the fore immediately. In fact, there's almost a peppery spice. I mentioned black licorice there. It's got that kind of intensity, but also there's a lovely acidity that's helping to show off some really spicy red to black fruit. So you've got notes of loganberry, raspberry, as well as black and black to red cherry. But sitting behind a slightly woody structure where there are notes of graphite. The fruit concentration here isn't allowing the oak to take over, and two have melded together really quite nicely, with that good acidity allowing juicy black fruit notes to continue on to a lovely finish. This is a really impressive wine. I took a look at the Wine Search aggregated critic score and it gets 94 out of 100. I'm not sure that I wouldn't give it 95 myself. I think there is a lovely balance between this very attractive, very powerful fruit and a firm, gripping structure that's always present but that isn't overpowering. The wine's lasting really well. I think its freshness shows that it has a long future ahead of it. Certainly I wouldn't see a problem coming back to this in 10, 15, 20, probably 25 years or more. It's got balance, it's got power, it's got concentration, it's got sweetness, it's got alcohol. Here is a wine that has all sorts of elements that it needs to develop and would certainly repay time in bottle. I think perhaps I've been lucky here because when I looked at the other drink station on the other side of the lounge, I noticed that there they had the Taylor's Vargellas, a single Quinta vintage port from 2005. So possibly this may be a bottle that's ended up in the wrong place, in which case I've been very fortunate, and certainly having tasted this will see me board my flight this evening with a big smile on my face. A lovely wine and a fantastic surprise to find in this environment. So thank you so much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, do please press the like button. If you're watching these videos and you haven't yet, it would be fantastic if you'd consider subscribing. I'd really appreciate that. And if you have friends you think might like to watch them, do please pass them on as well. I'd appreciate your help in that way. Additionally, if you have any comments or questions, please pop those in the comments box below. I'd love to know what you think about the wines I'm looking at, the tastings I'm doing, or anything else that relates to that. So thank you again for joining me, and I do hope that maybe you'll manage to make some time. Come and join me again in the near future. Till then, bye for now.